Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 41st chapter. O death, how bitter is the remembrance of thee to a man that liveth at rest in his possessions. Yeah, because one that is rich, who's finally enjoying his riches, the thought of death is very bitter because it'll separate him from this joy that he's enjoying. Unto the man that hath nothing to vex him, and that hath prosperity in all things, yea, unto him that is yet able to receive meat. The thought of death is very, very bitter to a man like that, because he has all that heart can want, and if death comes, he loses all that. O death, acceptable is thy sentence unto the needy, and unto him whose strength faileth. Why? Because he's suffering, and to him, his life is so bad that death would be better. That death would be a release or a relief from that. So it's acceptable. That is now in the last age. See, that he's old, his strength has failed him. Okay. It says, and is vexed with all things. And to him that despaireth and has lost patience. Right, they've suffered certain hardships. They're living in despair, and here, right, they may be having physical infirmities. I believe there's a precept that says death is better than continual sorrow or continual sickness. Okay, so there, to some, death is the most bitter thing to think about, and to others, it's quite a pleasant thought, given how bad or good their condition is. Fear not the sentence of death. Remember them that have been before thee, and that come after. For this is the sentence of the Lord over all flesh, right? So don't let it mess you up, right? This is what the Lord has decreed, that we are all mortal, right? At this point in time. So if it comes, it comes. Just live your life in a way where you won't fear, having not lived the right way when it comes. And why art thou against the pleasure of the Most High? Right, and here meaning like this is what the Lord has pleasure. This is what He has purposed and decided. If you're mad at the fact that you gotta die at some point, that's the Lord's decision. Right, there is no inquisition in the grave, whether thou have lived 10 or 100 or 1,000 years, you're still gonna die. The children of sinners are abominable children. And they that are conversant in the dwelling of the ungodly, right? They're abominable both to the parents and to the people and to God. And they're not going to last long. The Most High doesn't like abominations. The inheritance of sinners children shall perish. Whatever is passed down to them eventually is going to perish. And their posterity shall have a perpetual reproach. That is, their descendants will be had in derision, right? A perpetual, continual reproach. And sometimes too, it's not like, okay, the Lord just gonna smite you with a curse, but because they are sinners, okay, or ungodly, in their posterity, right, in their life and their descendants, they're gonna be living after that manner of wickedness, which is gonna keep on earning them that continual reproach. The children will complain of an ungodly father, because they shall be reproached for his sake. You see. Just like you'll be spoken well of for your father's sake, if you have a good and renowned father, you have gifts and favors because of your father. The reverse is also true. If your father was wicked, you'll be reproached for his sake. Woe be unto you, ungodly men, which have forsaken the law of the Most High. For if ye increase, it shall be to your destruction. You see that? If the Lord increases you, it's so He can destroy you. And if ye be born, it shall be, or ye shall be born to a curse. Right? Also going into reincarnation, because after you live that wicked life, right? Paul says that in 2 Corinthians 5, going down to 10, right? We must all appear before the judgment seat of Hamashiach, that everyone may receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad. You see that? So when you're born to a curse, which is a punishment, or a judgment that you have to live out as a result of your ungodly life that you may have either lived in that present or in the past. And if you die, a curse shall be your portion, right? So you live a horrible life. You live under a curse of the Lord. And if you die, it'll be due to that curse. All that are of the earth shall turn to earth again, right? Meaning that mortal man is going to die again. So the ungodly shall go from a curse to destruction, right? So they're going to go from a cursed life onto destruction, right? And they're going to die too. The mourning of men is about their bodies, right? So men mourn, about infirmities, but an ill name of sinners shall be blotted out. Okay, that is, an ill is like a bad name for bad deeds that you've done, right? It's going to be blotted out. If you look at, for example, the fate of Esau, Edom, after 1,000 years of serving captivity, Obadiah 1:18 is going to kick in. And the scriptures tell you, then, it'll be like looking for him, but you can't find him. It'll be like waking up from a dream and it flieth away. So they're going to be blotted out. Have regard to thy name, for that shall continue with thee above 1,000 great treasures of gold. Right? So be mindful of your reputation. That's what it means by your name. Because even after you die, that's how people are going to remember you. A good life hath but few days, but a good name endureth forever. Yeah, so, you may live 70, 80 years, even 90, right, and live a good life, but it's still short in comparison to eternity. And your life is short, but your name continues on forever. Today, we still know about Saul. Today, we still know about Moses, right? They died in their generations, thousands of years ago, but their name, right, is what we have here. It continues. My children, keep discipline in peace, for wisdom that is hid and a treasure that is not seen, what profit is in them both? See? So when if you're hiding wisdom, what's the point in having it? And if you have a profit or a treasure that you can't use, what's the point in having it? It's you might as well not have it. A man that that hideth his folly is better than a man that hideth his wisdom. Yeah, because what's that? There's a quote that embodies that first part of that saying. It says, yeah. So there's a quote here, right? It says here, better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. So, like we just read here, a man that hideth his foolishness is better than a man that hideth his wisdom, because you hiding your foolishness or your folly, one might only speculate, right, as to your mental faculties. But if you were to speak or you were to act it out, it would remove any doubts they may have had and say, yeah, for a fact, he's a fool. But the equivalent, right, or the reverse is also true. If you are a man of wisdom, but in due time and at the right time, you don't show your wisdom, people might think the contrary to you. They may think, oh, this guy's maybe not the sharpest tool in the box, It says here, therefore be shamefaced according to my word, for it is not good to retain all shamefacedness, neither is it altogether approved in everything. So there's a time and place to be shamefaced, right? It's not all the time, but there's a balance for it. So reading this, what verse is this? Verse 16 in the GNTD, it says, my children, listen, and I will teach you the circumstances when it is proper to be ashamed. Sometimes it's entirely out of place. Be ashamed. These are things to be so like the following things he lists are things to be ashamed of, right? It says, be ashamed of whoredom before father and mother, right? Immoral behavior before your parents, and of a lie before a prince and a mighty man, right? Be ashamed of that. Make sure that basically, if you're ashamed of it, you make sure that you don't end up in a case like that, right? Of telling a lie before a prince or a mighty man, because if you're found out, you're done, right? Your reputation is gone down the drain, and that trust is broken, if they ever had any. Verse 18, it says, of an offense before a judge and ruler, right? Be ashamed of an offense, offending before a judge and a ruler, of iniquity before the congregation and people, that's in public, right? Iniquity or sin that is publicly known, or unjust dealing before thy partner and friend, right? Dealing unjustly, or backhanded, or defrauding your friend or partner, right? be ashamed of that. When you're ashamed of it, you basically, it's things to avoid, right? It says of theft in regard to the place where thou sojournest, because if there goes around, right, word that you're a thief in the place where you sojourn, that's it. Your reputation, you're done. Your opportunities are all closed. Those doors are shut. It says, and in regard of the truth of God and his covenant, and to lean with thine elbow upon the meat, that is, leaning with your elbow upon the dinner table, so to speak, and of scorning to give and take. Let's read that, verse 19. GNTD says, before your neighbors be ashamed. It says, before your neighbors be ashamed of theft, be ashamed of breaking a promise, of leaning. Yeah, it's also here. It says Hebrew of breaking a promise, Greek of yourself before the truth of God, right? Be ashamed of yourself before the truth of God, of leaning on the dinner table with your elbows. Anybody when she has elbows, put them things back down. Of stinginess when you are asked for something. Where we at? Okay, so back into verse 20, and that's the of scorning to give and take, right? With being stingy when asked for something, and of silence before them that salute thee, right? If somebody salutes you and you just ignore them, that's you don't return that greeting. That's not something to be proud of. And to look upon an harlot and to turn away, that's staring. You staring at a prostitute. You know what that means, right? If somebody sees you, let's say that. Remember, we read about the immoral behavior before your father and mother, right? Here it is, you walking with your parents, for example. You see some fine shit, but we all know she a hoe, and you looking at down, all ways up, sideways. That hey, it's not a good look. It says to turn away thy face from thy kinsman, right? Meaning your relative that's in need of help, and you are turning you're turning your face away from them, right? That is, you are neglecting to help them. That's a shameful thing. Or to take away a portion or a gift, right? Take away something that rightfully belongs to somebody, or to gaze upon another man's wife, right? To have an adulterous look onto your neighbor's wife. That is, be ashamed of that, right? And beware of that and abstain from it. Or to be over busy with his maid. That is his, I'm going to read that in the GNTD after I finish the verse. It says, and come not near her bed, or of upbraiding speeches before friends, and after thou hast given, upbraid not. So it says here, of playing around with his slave woman, keep away from her bed. Of insulting your friends, that's the the upbraiding. Of following up your gifts with criticism, right? You give a gift, and you you speak in injurious speech or speaking ill with it. That's very shameful. You basically undo the goodness of giving the gift in the first place. Verse 23, or of iterating and speaking again that which thou hast heard, right? Basically, somebody tells you something and you can't keep it to yourself, and you're repeating it to others. That's revealing, as it says in the latter part, and of revealing of secrets. That's what you're doing. So shalt thou be truly shamefaced and find favor before all men, right? If you're beware of these things and you show shamefacedness in the right time, right? That's when you're going to find favor before all men. And that brings us to the end of the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 41st chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.